Hey, what's up? It's Fit Gear Hunter, and up for review today is the Polar Vantage M2. And as always, everything on the Fit Gear Hunter channel and the Fit Gear Hunter website associated with it, we review things and test things for the purpose of CrossFit and high-intensity interval training versus all the other running videos. So if you like the video, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more. We've got a lot of other content. The Polar Ignite 2 review is coming out. I'm going to do just a discussion and talk about knee sleeves, the double under wrist wraps that I was sent and have been testing. But for now, it is the Polar Vantage M2 that we are talking about. So we're going to look at it in a few basic parts. Number one, we're going to look at the specs and the details, just do a hands-on of how the watch works. Number two, we're going to look at how it displays a workout on the watch and in the app, and then how it tracks and follows your training over time, and some of the basics with just workout intensity. And then three, we're going to look at the wellness and recovery side of things. Then we're going to come back together and talk about a grand summary, and we're going to compare it to the Garmin 245. That's the Forerunner, the Coros Pace 2, and some of the other, compare it to the Suunto 5. So we're going to dive into the details. The summary is when we're going to talk about what is really different about this. We're going to look at some of the features and discuss those along the way, and then just going to do a summary comparison to the M2 versus the M original. So with that, let's look at a hands on the device, some of the basic overview of the details. Okay, so looking at the hands-on, what do we see? It's about 46 millimeters across in diameter. I always like to measure this because sometimes I don't know that they get it quite exact on the website. So 46 millimeters across, and the thickness is actually 14.6 millimeters in thickness. I'm not sure what they say on the website. The screen itself is 1.2 inches. So the screen, obviously has this large bezel. This is the same size screen as the 945 and the Garmin 245 and a lot of the devices, same screen as the Polar Vantage M was originally. You push this button to get a backlight, and if you're not using the backlight, you actually have to wait to do a wrist raise to get a dimmer version of the backlight. I did a rating on it. It was like 17.9 lumens, which if you think of the Garmin Fenix 6, comes in at like 69 lumens. So it's, I don't know what the math is, 20% the brightness of the Garmin Fenix 6. And the, Garmin 945 was 145, so considerably dimmer there, but it compares more like what the brightness is on the 245. So you see it basically in line with the overall brightness of like the Coros Apex Pro as well as the Coros Vertex. So brightness is not bad when you go to push a button, but one of the things that I'm already having problems with is the brightness of the backlight is so dim, I could barely get a reading on the light meter. So if you were to just turn off the lights and I was to show you a comparison to the Fenix 6, this is at 60% brightness. 60% brightness, is you can't even really see it on the Vantage M2. For me, this is a problem in dim light settings, and so you can see the brightness is just not really, doesn't compare. The other problem I have with the brightness in the backlight is if you're pushing the buttons, you see the full brightness doesn't come on. Like, why not? Why can't they give me full brightness when I push a button? I have to go physically push the one button just to be able to get it to turn on to full brightness. That seems idiotic. I don't know why there's not a control feature for that, but there is still not a control feature for that. So the button layout is the same as the original Vantage M, 2 buttons on the side, 3 buttons on the other side. This is using what looks like the Precision Prime 1.0, like the original. It is actually tracking a little bit more accurately. So in testing, and I'll post in the bottom of the video, the full analysis for tracking the heart rate accuracy when worn on the wrist for doing a CrossFit workout, it came in at 70% accurate across a number of workouts, whereas the Precision Prime 2.0, which is on the Grit X, is on the Vantage V2, came in at 67% accurate. So some definite failure there. So here's one of the differences between the original M and the M2 is that this has just a regular 22 millimeter watch band. The band is super comfortable. I don't know what they do, but their bands are always really great. It's got sort of a soft feel, almost like cloth, but it's a latex band. So what is different in, and I could show you the differences on the backlight for the Vantage V2, if I can get it to register the wrist raise. So you can see that there's a brighter, because the Vantage V2 actually has brightness adjustment based on the darkness of the room, so it'll actually get a little bit brighter on the wrist raise. It still only comes in at like 5 lumens, which again, compared to a regular watch, is like 25 lumens, so you're not getting full brightness there. But that's how it compares to the Vantage V2 in the brightness setting specifically. So if we go through some of the widgets, so you have your nightly recharge and sleep, and we'll talk about that in detail. Your training program, which just shows your training history. You have your current heart rate, Any of these you can dive into. This is your training load over time, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and the busyness of the day, so the activity overall. Basic screen, this is the summary of how much you hit different heart rate zones throughout the week, how much time you accumulated in different heart rate zones, the red being the peak zone. See, it keeps dimming out there. I just can't stand that they don't have any adjustments. The weather widget, we'll show that in a little bit of detail here so you can see, and you can zoom into different aspects of the weather just like you can on any of the main watches that are out. This is the FitSpark, which will give you recommendations. All of these things are the same. So I don't have the music controls displayed here, but those are the only new features, is basically the software ones. So the band is different, but everything else seems the same. The backlight is still super dim. I remember my first Vantage M I tested, I literally sent it back to Polar because I thought the backlight was broken because it was so dim. I had only tested a few watches that time. I thought this can't be right. So as far as new features on the software side, you basically have the activities the same, training load pros the same. You have this, which is accumulation of just those minutes in different zones throughout the week, and you can click into that and see, you know, your time spent in different zones over the course of the week and your workout history. That's new, a feature that's different. And then the weather, obviously the weather widget, which we actually just looked at, so we won't go into. The other thing that's not shown here because I disabled it and forgot before the review is the music controls. This is just like Garmin had on their watches like 6 years ago, where you can control the music on your phone. So if you're playing music on your phone to headset or to Bluetooth headphones, you can skip forward, skip back, you know, basic controls, again, like Garmin had on like 12 generations ago with most of their watches. So that is an overview. Just to show you a brief comparison, and I did a full comparison in the video showing the heart rate accuracy. This is the Vantage, so you can see it's got yellow and red diodes, and if I can get this to fire, you'll see, well, it has, there it is, red and green diodes. So that's the difference on the hardware, the spec side. Let's talk about some of the workout. So what do we see about that? We can see that they've added some of the software changes, but the body of the watch is very similar to the original body. I didn't have an M to compare it to directly right now, but the body is basically the same with just a difference to the band. The band quality is fantastic, and the casing, the design of the casing is nice, but the screen is severely lacking in brightness and just overall quality, in my opinion. So the wrist raise is just terribly, terribly dim. Doesn't compare to any watch on the market right now. You can't adjust. And the fact that it dims and you have to go back and hit the brightness, even when you're clicking through the buttons, it'll go back to a dim mode. That is problematic. Notifications coming in on a consistent basis is problematic. And overall, now that the watches are evolving, the software and just the overall experience feels overly simple and just overly sort of behind the times, like they're not developing fast enough. So all that aside, just the watch itself, let's look at what it does in a workout. So how it features the workout details and summary, how it evaluates the exertion and intensity of the workout, how it shows you your training over time, so we can see how does this watch really test our fitness, especially when it comes to CrossFit and high intensity interval training. So let's dive in. Okay, so what do you see in a workout? So you're basically gonna hit this bottom button. You're gonna go into the start training, and you're going to go into a workout, and it's basically going to just run the same stats it did on the Vantage M. So if you've seen the Vantage M, it runs the same basic stats, although you can adjust some basic things. You can have the backlight stay on, training suggestions, maybe set up an interval timer and countdown timer. So some of those software changes are better. One thing I forgot to show in the spec and overview is you have FuelWise built into this, and you can have reminders set. Now you can't do it on this particular workout, but if you went to a different workout like running, you could set battery save motion options, power save, as well as fuel reminders if I can not make a mistake. Training suggestions, race pace. These are some of the software additions and that have been added to it. So if you go into the FuelWise, this is where I should have done it. Smart carb reminders, manual carb reminders, drink reminders. So you can see, if you're going on a long run, this doesn't affect the CrossFit high intensity interval stuff as much. But if you were doing a super, super long run, you could set carb reminders that based on your consumption level, and manual carb reminders just based on a time period, as well as drink reminders. The other thing that it does differently, and let's look at a workout itself, is the impact of the workout on your overall internal fuel. So let's take a workout like yesterday. It tells you the heart rate, your basic training load over time, the heart rate zones. Again, all this is the exact same as it was, but now it's showing this energy used and the carbs versus the proteins that were burned up in that particular workout. So you can see information that's not, wasn't there before. So energy used is another new feature. So the fuel wise, which is basically just a reminder to eat or drink when you're on a long workout, or the energy used metrics when you go to look at a post-workout evaluation. There's the cardio load. That's one of the most important aspects of a workout because it's your overall exertion score as it relates to, and then you can see, if we get out of that, what you see post-workout session across the week. This is your Training Load Pro. So this is where you dive in. This is the same as it was on the Polar Vantage M. There's no special features or differences here. I do love how it looks and with the basics of the information. So great, you don't have to fix something if it's not broken, but it just gives you an evaluation of your strain, which is your average cardio load score over the last 7 days versus the tolerance. See, you probably can't even see the watch very well because it keeps dimming out. The tolerance, which is your average strain per day over the course of the last 4 weeks. So 1 week versus 4 weeks. If this is higher than this, then it'll have a positive score here and it'll put you in the productive zone. I didn't have as much time to work out today, so I fell a little bit behind on the stats. So that's what you see in the workouts, post-workout, as well as the training load evaluation in the watch itself. Let's look at the app. So looking at the basic app, you have this summary screen, which is a recent addition. I think it was like 3 months ago they updated the app to show basics of all the things that you've amassed for the day. So activity, just how active you were that day. The workout, most recent workout session, the cardio load status. Now this obviously isn't available on the Unite, only on the Ignite or higher. Your sleep, your nightly recharge, and your overall sleep score. So it gives you a summary of information, but you click on the bottom, you can see a more detailed summary of your day. You can see your heart rate over time and peaks and different sides of it. You can see the stats over time, which is just basic summary stats like you'd have on a Fitbit. Then you go over to the next page over and it's the nightly recharge. We'll talk about that. But here's the training plan. Here's the evaluation of workouts over the last period of time. You can swipe this across the top and you can see last week's workouts. So you can see it in summary form there if you want to look at like a log book, as well as at the top you can see how much time you've accumulated in minutes for each of the zones if you're tracking your zones and doing intensity based on particular zones. So if you look at a workout, what it shows in the app after you've gotten done with the workout, you click into one of them and let's just say it was hard. It'll ask you to evaluate your workout. And this was done on the Ignite 2, but with the chest strap, so it's going to have a little bit of limitation. No, it actually has the same information as you would have on the M2. So, you can see the basic summary in all the red zone. If you had a run, it would have a whole bunch more stats. If you had a bike, it would have a whole bunch more stats in the red zone here. Just it pushes all the information all in this one red block. Then you have your Training Load Pro, which is actually the key piece of information, especially if you're doing CrossFit or high intensity interval training, because that's how much exertion you placed on your body for the period. Here you can see the workout. Obviously, there was actually yesterday was heavy back squats and then like a 200-foot, 140-pound or 270-pound kettlebells. Farmer's carry. So the amount of time you spent and then the energy used. Again, this is a new feature. Tracks over from the watch, tracks over into the app, and you can see the energy impact on your body. But it's the same basic information as you would see on the M. It's not a whole lot different there other than the energy consumption that was taken into account. The one thing that's different is how you see yourself training over time. Because you look at this, you can say, okay, I have this much accumulated in the zones, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, like the different levels of heart rate zones. I have this much accumulated in the overall duration of time for workouts this week. But if you click on the cardio load where it says maintaining, it'll take you into a graph, and this graph is awesome. So this is your training load over time. Oh, I'm sorry. What you actually have to click in is you see in the top right corner, there's an expansion where it says arrows all facing outwards. You click that, and that's the awesome chart. So you can see the blue line is your overall fitness. As you're tracking across time, the fitness goes up, the blue line goes up. You can see the purple line is your average of your last 7 days of strain, and then the red line is the particular day of strain. So you can hold your finger on it and you can see in this day, I had a strain cardio load of 218, so that pulled all the averages up. You can see that that purple line spikes up because it pulled all the, the average for the week up, and then you can see the blue line slightly goes up because it pulled the average for the last 4 weeks up. So it's an easy calculation. I do love that you can see yourself across a long period of time to see if you're trending in the right direction with pushing your fitness, but it's just based on those 3 variables. It's based on your cardio load for the workout itself, the average 7-day strain, so basically like the total amount of cardio load you accumulated in 7 days divided by 7, and then the tolerance, which is how much your body is used to in the last 4 weeks. So is it the best science? I don't know. It is a little bit simple, but I like that I can see it and understand it. So this is one of Polar's really greatest features. Then you shrink down the size and you come back to start just to see things. So with that, let's talk about it for a little bit. So what do we see about those summary things? Obviously, the training load tracking is awesome. It's really great how they lay it all out, how you can compare it to how you're doing this week versus how you're doing in previous weeks. It's very simple to understand, and you can see your sort of trend lines over time, and you can see huge histories very quickly over time versus any of the other watch manufacturers. Nobody else is quite getting this right. So the workouts themselves, it gives you valuable information in the CrossFit community or high intensity interval training. You don't need a lot of stats. You really just need the intensity measures, the zones, where you're hitting and your heart rate, how much you kept in a certain zones, and some evaluation for the workout intensity, just the impact it would have on your body. So that is the most primary important thing, and that's all we get. I don't like that it's in a big red screen. You get all your stats in one big red gobbledygook, but either way, it gives you the summary of information in a very well laid out format. So obviously, when we're doing CrossFit and high intensity interval training, you're putting extreme load on your body for short bursts of time or for long bursts of time, depending on the workout, and your body is going to be wrecked a number of times. You're going to often feel sore throughout the week on any given week, even if you've been doing it for a while. That's the sign you're pushing yourself. So how do we evaluate our recovery and our need for recovery? How do we see if we're getting enough sleep and measuring those? So let's take a look at how the Vantage M2 is measuring the wellness side of things, the sleep side of things, and helping us to have valuable information to where we can gauge and evaluate where our body stands for the next hard workout. Okay, so wellness, we'll just see quickly what's in the watch. You have your nightly recharge, which is the same as it was on the original Vantage M. So you dive into that and you can see your sleep stats. So you can see your sleep score as well as your ANS recharge scores, autonomic nervous system, so an evaluation of how much the sleep regenerated your nervous system and your overall health and wellness. So you can dive into any of those things. The stats are the same as previous, so we're not going to spend a lot of time there. And then the FitSpark. FitSpark will give you evaluation if you've pushed yourself and already did a hard workout. Now it's suggesting, because previously it was suggesting more, although my night's sleep was so terrible, I think it probably was unsupportive to begin with. But it's suggesting workouts based on your recovery from the last night as well as the workouts you may have done already that day. Let's look at the app though, just to see how the wellness could benefit your training. So what do we see in the wellness side? I think the wellness just sort of basically summarizes. I mean, you can get some wellness details by just looking at your activity for the day. Your activity score in the middle bar, 46%, because I just had a lifting workout. I didn't have a Metcon because I just didn't have time today. But the main thing is in this center, the bottom tab, nightly recharge. This is where it tells you your recovery through the last night of sleep, and it does really a really helpful culmination of information. Now, this information is not necessarily more advanced than Garmin's platform in some ways, because Garmin will track some of these stats 24/7. But the basic thing is on the sleep charge. It does a really good job evaluating a bunch of different metrics: sleep time, solidity, long interruptions, continuity, actual sleep, regeneration through REM, and regeneration through deep sleep. And it gives you a sleep score. This is really on par with a lot of the different higher level quality sleep evaluation units I've tested, like Whoop or like the Garmin Fenix 6 that has the more advanced. So the sleep score is really right on par, but it is an excellent sleep evaluation. But you think about wellness, you think about more than sleep, and it has the autonomic nervous system recharge over the course of the night. Now, this is only a 4-hour window. So you can see it starts about an hour after you go to bed and ends 4 hours after that. And it tracks your beat-to-beat intervals, your heart rate variability, and your breathing rate. And the whole purpose is to evaluate your 28-day moving averages relative to last night's stats to see if you slept worse, or specifically your nervous system had less regeneration or rejuvenation through the night's sleep. So it's really useful information. The only downside is it's just that 4-hour window. So if you had more of a disturbance in the early part of the night and then you slept really well the last part of the night, it's not going to pick that up. It's not going to accurately tell you your regeneration evaluation. So it is just a 4-hour window. So the stats and the way they pull all this information together is fantastic and it's useful. It's just not taking into account the whole night of sleep. It's just taking a window in. So it's not as helpful there. But overall, I like, very poor. I think that's spot on with, what my body battery and what the night, the sleep was on 2 other devices I tested last night. Nightly recharge, so you can see that it's better in that one. Not very good. Missed a couple of nights. And then you can see just a general range. It's giving you information. So all in all, the nightly recharge has been a useful, and many people like its benefits and impacts. So let's come back together and talk about it all. Okay, so looking at everything all together, what do I think about the Polar Vantage M2? In all honesty, I feel like it should be named the Polar Vantage M 1.1. All of the main things feel like they're just software developments that came out on the Grid X and the Polar Vantage V2. So I don't feel like there's nearly enough newness to be this second wave release, although that they're just sort of selling it as a new device with just updated software built into it. So those are things that could have been done in a software reset. So the fuel-wise, energy, fuel, water hydration reminders, power save mode, weather, music controls, the watch face views, all those things are decent, but they don't at all qualify as a 2.0 of a watch. This watch is not that significantly different, and they didn't update in a significant or felt way the quality of the screen, the experience of just using the watch day to day, the backlight brightness, all of the basic things, and even the number of watch faces is not that extensive. So I would just say it's just barely an update to the last watch. It's not something necessarily that I would look to upgrade if I had the original Vantage M. So how does it compare to some of the other watches on the market? The Garmin 245. Now, one major thing the Garmin 245 can't do is it can't do multi-sport tracking. So you're going to lose that function. But what does the 245 do better, especially for those doing CrossFit or high-intensity interval training that aren't doing triathlons as their main form of sport? It has a billion different better features. It's got a ton more customizations. You can add a bunch of different widgets. You can change the information back and forth. You have a million different watch faces on Connect IQ. The screen is obviously already out of the gate considerably brighter. The wrist raise is as bright as the original, the full screen, so you're not losing anything there. Notifications come in smoothly and clearly, and the notifications even appear on the screen versus having to raise your wrist to be able to see the notification appear. It's got improved recovery time, so now on the Garmin 245, it'll give you recovery time not just based on the intensity of the workout, which Polar doesn't even give recovery time based on the intensity of the workout, but it gives improved recovery time that's based on your body battery, which is a measure of heart rate variability at all times, 24/7. So it's taking all that into account, your quality of sleep, your body battery, heart rate variability over time, as well as the intensity of the workout to give you recovery time estimates. The 245 connects to Ant Plus devices, not just Bluetooth only, and it gives you anaerobic and aerobic training effects, so different sides of the training impact that that particular workout had on your overall training plan. What does the M2 do that's better? Well, I think the sleep tracking is better because Garmin has yet to update the 245 to their advanced sleep metrics. Now, the website shows that it is coming, that it's going to be here at some point, and then it will be more of a head-to-head comparison because the Garmin Fenix 6 that has the advanced sleep analytics is actually right on point with the sleep analytics of the Polar system and the Polar nightly recharge, the sleep side. And then Polar does the autonomic nervous system regeneration recovery. So it basically helps you to see how your nervous system is recovering through the night's sleep, but it's the same metrics. It's beat to beat intervals, it's heart rate variability throughout just a 4-hour period of sleep and respiration. Now, Garmin doesn't take into account beat to beat intervals and respiration to determine your depletion of your battery. But what Garmin does that's better is it gives you the heart rate variability over time. So if you had an intense day and you really were exerting yourself at a high level and then you slept poorly, you're going to show it even more clearly. So Polar is not going to know that you had a hard, long, stressful day. It's just going to evaluate were your metrics good in that 4-hour window of sleep time. The other thing that it does better is it shows your load over time. So Polar has a better display, and it's just all in the app experience for how it displays your training load over time and the impact the load is having on you. So how does the Polar Vantage M2 compare to the Coros Pace 2? Now they're both tracking multi-sports. I actually had Matt Lagrange because I haven't tested the Pace 2, but I can see the specs and I know the basics of the Coros platform having tested a number of their devices. So the Coros Pace 2 is coming in a little bit more dim than the Vantage M2 in the full brightness. So it's like 10% dimmer than the Vantage M2, but in the wrist rays, it's like 10 times brighter because the wrist rays on the Polar Vantage M2 is basically coming in so dim that it just doesn't compare with anything else. So wrist rays experience on the Coros Pace 2 is a million times better, and the overall brightness is a hair better on the Polar Vantage M2 than it is on the Pace 2. So the weight is obviously lighter on the Coros Pace 2. You have some of the basic functions. The widgets are a little bit different. You don't have access to weather, but the pricing's different. So the Coros Pace 2 is coming in at $200, can do all the multi-sport things, and the Polar Vantage M2 is coming in at $300. So that's more expensive. But on the flip side, the sleep tracking is a million times better on the Polar series, and the load tracking is a million times better. So for that, I would probably lean towards, if I didn't have a problem with what the watch shows me and how clear and legible it is with the brightness of the backlight, which is sort of a deal breaker for me, I would still, if just looking at the statistics, I would lean to the Vantage M2 because I do think it is so much better for the recovery side, for the sleep tracking, because Coros has got yet to figure that out and make it displayed in a good way, and the load tracking over time. So if you're in a training plan, the Polar Vantage M2 is going to be a better choice. Recovery, load tracking over time. How does it compare to the Suunto 5? So the Suunto 5 is going to have resources, I believe, which is going to track your heart rate variability. It is a first beat metric, so it's going to have quality benefits there. And the sleep tracking is going to be not as good as the M2, so you're going to lose some benefits there. Suunto has just a different platform, and the way they display information in the app is I think it's more visually useful, but that's more of a personal preference. So I think it's somewhat head-to-head there. I would give the advantage to the M2. So again, we're going back to looking at the M2 versus Garmin's platform, and Garmin's platform right now is just extensively more diverse, more expansive, more customizable, and has better information on the whole than I think the Polar ecosystem has. So with that, that is the Polar Vantage M2 review with the Fit Gear Hunter. Thanks so much for watching.